A very good evening to you and welcome to Primetime News on MTV Sports. I'm Nadim Majid.
And I'm Krishni Panditharatna. We start off the news with a look at your headlines first.
Making headlines this evening, Parliamentary Select Committee convenes to examine charges against the Chief Justice. Number plate of the vehicle used in the attack on the Secretary to the Judicial Service Commission found to be fake. Chief Government Whip advises the opposition leader.
The Special Parliamentary Committee appointed to examine the charges against Chief Justice Dr. Shirani Bandaranaike and report to Parliament met at the Parliament complex this afternoon.
Speaker Chamal Rajapaksa announced the Parliamentary Select Committee to examine the charges against the Chief Justice when Parliament convened this morning. I would like to announce that a special Parliamentary Select Committee has been appointed under the chairmanship of Honorable Priyadarshini Appa in accordance with Part 2 of Clause B of Standing Order number 78 in order to examine the allegations and proposals in the document included in the parliamentary agenda on the 6th of November in order to propose to the President the removal of the Chief Justice Dr. Shirani Bandaranaike. The impeachment motion has been brought forward based on false facts. 117 parliamentarians of the government have presented an impeachment motion based on false facts to be included in the order paper. The 117 who signed this include senior ministers who have been here for some time and also lawyers. It is very clear that not all these individuals read the charge sheet. If they read it before signing it, these false facts could not have been included. The government is attempting to amend the charge sheet by using its majority in the Select Committee. There is no room for this according to standing orders. The Select Committee should investigate only the charges that have been presented. If the constitution is being violated, someone will step forward and say it is wrong. But if someone is working in accordance with the constitution and the law, no one can say such a thing. Everyone is watching whether the constitution or the law is being violated. Based on this, the speaker will take appropriate steps. The government says that the Chief Justice has 20 accounts. Even though she is a woman, she gave a clear answer to the government and we were impressed. Now a committee of 11 individuals has been appointed to hear the impeachment. All 11 of them should not have had legal cases against them. We saw in the newspaper that Vimal Veeravansa has gone before the Chief Justice. Therefore, he has something against her. Therefore, no individual who has a case against them or have been found guilty should hear this impeachment. Those who are levelling allegations, who have become signatories to these allegations, and those who are investigating the allegations against the Chief Justice must be those who have not had such allegations levelled against them. As Jesus Christ said, "Let he among you who is without sin cast the first stone." Likewise, we challenge them to prove that there is no one among the Parliamentary Select Committee or amongst the 117 government MPs who signed the motion who have not had such charges levelled against them. If that is the case, then inquiries can be made and the people have the right to hold inquiries against who have such charges.
It has been revealed that the number plate of the vehicle which was used by the group that attacked the Secretary to the Judicial Service Commission is fake. The magisterial inquiry in this regard was taken up before the Mount Alvernia Chief Magistrate Nirosha Fernando today.
The Colombo Crimes Division informed court this morning that following information received on the vehicle used by the gang that attacked Manjula Tilakaratne, 450 similar vehicles had been checked in the Western Province. The police also informed court that the mobile phone of Manjula Tilakaratne, which was stolen by the assailants, remained switched off. The magistrate ordered the police to arrest the suspects without further delay and present them before court. The inquiry will be taken up again on the 13th of next month.
මෙතන අපිට මංජුල තිලකරත්න කියන පුද්ගලික චරිතය.
What is important here is not the individual named Manjula Tilakaratna, but the attack launched on the Secretary to the Judicial Service Commission, which is the main independent judicial institution in the country. Even if another secretary is appointed in the future, he should at least have an environment where he can engage in his duties without fear in order to protect the independence of the judiciary in this democratic country.
අවස්ථාවක් ඕනේ අධිකරණයේ ස්වාධීනත්වය රකින්න අවශ්‍ය නම් ප්‍රජාතන්ත්‍රවාදී රටක නම්.
Speaking at a ceremonial sitting of the Court of Appeal today to welcome Justice Daya Chandrasiri Jayatilaka as a judge of the Court of Appeal, President's Counsel MP Vijayadasa Rajapaksa said, in the fabric of law, the golden thread that runs around it is the adherence to the rule of law.
In his speech, Rajapaksa, who is also the president of the Bar Association of Sri Lanka, noted that in order to uphold the rule of law, the most essential and cardinal requirement is the independence of the judiciary and that of the judges as well. He said that even the slightest departure from this principle would amount to a whirlwind sweeping across the whole gamut, thereby causing destruction and devastation of all those whom we hold dear and near to us, reducing all human values and liberties to smithereens. Rajapaksa added, in view of it all, the stakeholders of a democratic setup, namely the executive, the legislature and the judiciary and the media, are duty-bound to safeguard this noble principle as guardians of 20 million people living in this country. He said it is imperative that all the said four organs are absolutely obliged to understand that any undesirable compromise with matters relating to public affairs would jeopardize the liberty of the people. He said the liberty and the guarantees given to the people by the Constitution may remain a mere ornament unless the judiciary performs its duties and functions in strict impartiality and without any fear or favour from whichever quarter it comes. In his speech, President's Counsel Vijayadasa Rajapaksa also cited the recently adopted Constitution of South Africa, which categorically and strongly spells out what the judicial authority entails. This being, the courts are independent and are subject only to the Constitution and law, which they shall apply impartially and without fear, favour or prejudice. No person or organs of the state shall interfere with the functioning of the court, and that organs of the state through legislative and other measures shall assist in protecting the court to ensure the independence, impartiality, accessibility and effectiveness of court. Rajapaksa concluded his speech by quoting Michael Templer's famous words on the rule of law. Quote, we have a problem when the same people who make the law get to decide whether or not they themselves have broken the law. Unquote.
The Minister of Rehabilitation and Prison Reforms, Chandrasiri Jayatilaka, says that a special committee will be appointed to look into the clash that occurred at the Walikada prison. He made this statement in Parliament today in response to a question raised by parliamentarian Anurukumara Disanayaka on Monday.
At a media briefing held today, former Attorney General Mohan Piris commented on the Walikada clash.
And it's one of the aspects that the LLRC will also focus on, and that is to take measures to reduce the prison population and perhaps resort in a generous manner to reduce by 27? No, that's minor compared to the population actually. That's very minor compared to the population that we have. I think the chief way to address it is by the resort to non-custodial sentencing measures.
Meanwhile, 4 inmates who escaped from the Walikada prison during the clashes have been identified. The escapees are Gurugevila Gunatilaka, a resident of Gatahattanagoda, Kasturi Arachage Gayan Chintaka, a resident of Nugegoda, Charles Winslow, a resident of Maradana, and Vidanage Tharuka Rajkumara, a resident of Bamunavela, Kurunagala.
Yes, there are various diametrically opposite statements that have been made by the government quarters, especially the officials of high nature, which basically put our country into serious jeopardy. At a time when the world is looking at Sri Lanka as a place where the fundamental and human rights are at question, the official statements issued by some of the government officials only give oxygen to the world to think that there is a human rights problem in our country. 27 to 28 people have been killed. 40, 50, 60, 70 people have been injured. There are some people that are missing in action. Is it that they are purposely missing in action? Some people do want to take people because there are people who want to give statements against the government. But what is it that is there? Why can't they put these pictures out of these people who have gone out? If they can't, the government can't have give it to people like Sirasa, so they'll do the job. Ensure that they bring it out and show the people that these people are missing. Or is it just a fabrication which only gives rise to many things that are there and then do away with certain people that they don't want to?
The BBC, quoting a leaked draft internal UN report, says the United Nations failed in its mandate to protect civilians in the last months of Sri Lanka's civil war. Quoting the leaked report, Liz Doucet, the chief international correspondent of BBC News, says that events in Sri Lanka mark a grave failure of the UN.
The BBC reports that the UN's investigation into its own conduct during the last months of the conflict reveals that the organization should in future be able to meet a much higher standard in fulfilling its protection and humanitarian responsibilities. The report does, however, highlight the positive role played by some UN staff on the ground and the Secretary General, but it points to a systemic failure. According to Liz Doucet, despite the ground situation, this report points out that in Colombo, many senior UN staff did not perceive the prevention of killing of civilians as their responsibility, and agency and department heads at UN HQ were not instructing them otherwise. Citing the leaked report, the BBC says there was a sustained and institutionalized reluctance among UN personnel in Sri Lanka to stand up for the rights of people they were mandated to assist. The BBC also reports that the leaked draft explores how senior staff in Colombo had insufficient political expertise and experience in armed conflicts and in human rights to deal with the challenge that Sri Lanka presented, and were not given sufficient policy and political support from headquarters. The leaked draft also supposedly points to the Sri Lankan government's stratagem of intimidation, including control of visas to sanction staff critical of the state. The BBC, citing the leaked draft, says that during the last months of the war in Sri Lanka, there was not a single formal meeting of the Security Council or other top UN bodies. Meanwhile, the UN spokesman in Colombo at the time, Gordon Wise, told the BBC that there was genuine fear for their safety. Speaking to the BBC's News Hour program, he said that casualty figures were withheld as a result of difficulties in operating in the country, adding that the government was not letting UN staff anywhere near the war zone. Former senior UN official Charles Petrie, who headed the internal review panel, said the penultimate draft, which has been leaked, very much reflects the findings of the panel. He is now in New York to present the report to UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. A former UN official has said that the establishment of the panel is a sign that the UN is very serious about dealing with its failure in Sri Lanka. Meanwhile, the UN's former humanitarian chief John Holmes has criticized the report. Holmes told the BBC that the UN faced some very difficult dilemmas at the time and could be criticized for the decisions it had taken. UN spokesman Martin Naserki told the BBC that the UN does not comment on leaked reports, adding that a final version would be published once the Secretary General had received it and read it.
Meanwhile, at the UN daily press briefing convened yesterday, journalists questioned the UN spokesperson on whether Charles Petrie would be submitting the report to Secretary General Ban Ki-moon this week.
First of all, we don't comment on leaked documents. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, as I mentioned yesterday, the Secretary General will be receiving the report of his internal review panel on United Nations action in Sri Lanka this week. And when he does receive it and has read it, it will be made public. And I can tell you that indeed tomorrow morning the Secretary General will be meeting Charles Petrie, who headed the panel, and I would anticipate that the report will be made public soon after that.
Furthermore, convening a media briefing in Colombo this morning upon his arrival from Geneva following the UN Human Rights Council Universal Periodical Review, Presidential Envoy on Human Rights Minister Mahinda Samarasinghe expressed these views on the report.
Let's wait and see when the report is shared, official report is shared, what they have to say. How can you intimidate the UN, let alone the US ambassador or the EU ambassador who was there, or the Japanese ambassador? These are, personalities who represent countries who are suffering, and they don't get intimidated by anyone. We worked in close collaboration with all our partners. There's no question about that.